Hi, welcome back to Recruitment and Beyond. This is episode 3 of our podcast. And today, actually, we thought we would jump on and talk about relationships at work. Obviously, in the news right now, quite topical. But there's a lot of employers out there maybe don't have the right policy, maybe don't understand quite what they need to do in terms of relationships at work. So we thought, let's jump on and have a chat. So, Natalie, good to see you again.
Hello, you all right?
I'm very well, very well. Doing this from home today rather than in the studio, the makeshift studio that is the Eden
Oh,
Scott
good.
Recruitment and Beyond studio. So I thought, we jump on here and chat a bit about relationships. As I say, it's in the news currently. There's various things going on. So we thought, what can people do? What is the law? What does the law say in terms of relationships at work? What are employers compelled to do? What are they allowed to do?
Absolutely. I guess, yeah, you're right. It's very controversial at the moment. There's lots of people speaking about particular media attention at the moment. There is no UK law. That is the fact. There is no law or legislation in terms of, and if we were to think about it, in many of your own circle of groups of friends or
Yeah.
a lot. I tried to find current stats. There's a lot of maybe 2014, 2015, no current stats. I guess the most up-to-date one was around 28% of people in their current relationship have met in the workplace.
Really?
So
Really?
it's a big thing. It is a big
Yeah.
thing.
I know I
So
met my wife at work, and that's
yeah, I met my husband at work as well. That's 100% on the chat so far. But yeah, absolutely. So I guess the stat kind of shows what's happening as well. But there's no legislation around it. Obviously, there's policy and there can be things that can be done, and there are kind of legal risks as well on trying to enforce this. But in the UK, there's no legislation. There's best practice and maybe what we can do to assist. But remember how far can an employer go, etc. as well. But we need to be mindful of the other risks as well.
So what do people do? What's because I know there's different approaches in America, isn't there? So they've got a slightly different approach to this. And
Yeah.
what do they do?
Absolutely. So they they enter a love contract.
A love contract.
A
Oh my
love
goodness.
contract or a consensual relationship agreement, if you want the proper,
Yeah.
where they basically regulate and they declare their relationship at work. We are far from that. Obviously, we are far from that. We would want to, in many other businesses that we've maybe given advice or spoken to or helped with policy, we might say that it would be quite nice and it would be what we would prefer. And our policy would be not legislative, but just the company policy that we would like to know if there are any individuals in a workplace relationship as well.
Right, okay.
We need to be very mindful, though. We've got employment law, but we've got human rights as well, where actually we do have a certain right to private and family life. We'll hear this in many cases all the time, don't we, as well, that right to private and family life, which is so important. But I guess if there are certain roles within a business or there is certain confidentiality, that pillow talk at night time, how was your day? Oh, wait till I tell you. So we need to be careful around all of that. So we've got our conflict of interest, we've got our confidentiality issues as well, but also what happens when the relationship breaks down and the rest of the conflict that can happen in the workplace when two people maybe fall out.
Yeah, because that's part of that Human Rights Act of 1998, isn't it? That there is a separation between family and private life, and obviously being at work as well. So that's something that you wouldn't be able to get over in terms of putting in place a love contract or a consensual, what do they call it? A consensual relationship agreement. Yes, that sounds a bit more, sounds better than a love contract. So I mean, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That there then creates a scenario where potentially some people are discriminated against because, either one side or the other in terms of relationship, whether that's due to seniority or gender or anything like that. And that causes its own difficulties, isn't it?
Absolutely. Is someone penalised in that relationship because they're in a relationship with someone else, etc.? So we need to be very, very careful. At the most, obviously, it would be a constructive unfair dismissal claim. There are occasions where maybe there's been a policy and two people have not got on and one person maybe just has to go, but that would be a mutual agreement mainly, more than kind of enforceability by the business as well. So yeah, lots to think about.
I know. So how far? I mean, yeah, how far can employers go? I suppose it is just then a request for people to say, look, we're in a relationship. Whether that's, do you have that conversation with your manager? Do you need to go above that? What can employers do, and then what should employees think about?
Well, we've not written yet the love contract. I've yet to be
No,
asked
it's
for
good.
that one. Maybe close
You've
to, but
not.
no, yeah, we're not quite at that stage of writing those love contracts. And in terms of a tribunal, etc., they're not going to like it, are they? They're not going to
No.
like these things as
No.
well. They're not going to even like enforcing that no workplace relationship can happen, because the reality is what we've just discussed there. There's 100% of our stats met in the workplace, so
Yeah.
but we're looking at like being careful. Obviously, it's a choice and it can happen, but how do we regulate, and how do we not having that blanket ban, basically just making sure that if you do have a policy in place, what the go-to would be. So if you are, maybe just disclosing it to your manager so that there's
Yeah.
no conflict. Somebody might need to swap departments or something as well, or it's just about keeping an eye and managing that as well, isn't it? Because if there is confidential items happening, then it's a bit of a difficult one. There is a bit of politics around, but yeah, a tribunal's not going to be happy with that blanket ban.
No, and I suppose there's a bit of onus on the individual here to say, look, to step up and take a bit of ownership for this and say, there is potential conflict here. If you sit in a board, there's potential conflicts of interest.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
know
Yep.
it's not quite the same, but a bit of onus on the individual to say, look, I can see in the future there's potential issues here. What do we do? How can we work our way around this? And maybe having that conversation with the employer and saying, look,
Yeah,
eventually there's
absolutely.
potentially an issue here.
And I guess the issues arise from, if we think about the current immediate attention that has been drawn, and obviously the facts are the facts, and it's only hearsay and everything at the moment, as we know, but maybe where the person has not disclosed, and then it does come out in the wash. And if there has been any potential investigation previously, or any kind of fact finding to see maybe where two people have got a bit closer than they would have thought for a professional relationship, that's a different story, isn't it? That's not disclosing maybe against your policy, and then denying, and then having a breach or a loss of trust and confidence, isn't it? And that's a separate issue, I guess. Yes, it develops from the relationship, but it's not following policy in terms of not disclosing. If that was the policy, that it would be better to disclose.
Yeah, and I suppose then that in terms of first steps for employers out there, first step, get a policy. Make sure you've got a policy in place, and make sure everybody can see it, can find it, can reference it if they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the policy may not be enforceable in a court of law, but if you're trying to protect things and you're just asking for voluntary disclosure, I mean, you can't really. There are probably companies out there that really maybe bad things have happened and people have fallen out, and it's just created such a conflict in the organisation. But I guess you cannot say you cannot fall in love with that person, you cannot have a personal relationship with that person. That would go into the human rights, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a bit of a challenge to say you cannot fall in love with that person. That would certainly come up against some opposition, I would imagine. Yes. So okay. Well, listen, that's great. Thank you very much for your time and your insight today. I appreciate, as I say, it's pretty topical right now. So yeah, if there's any other feedback or any discussions you'd like us to follow on from this, then let us know, or any topics you'd like us to cover. But thank you very much, Natalie.
Thanks.